Hi, my name's Fiona Maini. I'm a Global Compliance and Strategy Principal at Medidata, and today we're going to talk about the changing regulatory environment in the life sciences and healthcare industries. So I think there's been an evolution of collaboration that's gone on over the past few years. We see regulators and industry, trade associations, academia, and of course patient groups all working much more closely together. And this is a great step forward. And clearly science and technology and innovation is going at a significant pace at the moment. And sometimes the regulators essentially have to change regulatory frameworks so that they can catch up with science and technology. There's a concept called the pacing problem, where essentially it's just that, it's the science and technology that are going at such a fast rate that there becomes a gap between science and technology and regulators and regulations. There are a lot of initiatives going on at the moment to actually close that gap, such as the new Good Clinical Practice Renovation and Modernisation, which is looking to adapt and change the frameworks in place today, which are really traditional, but adapt to today's and tomorrow's world of innovation. And it's a very exciting time. We see non-traditional relationships occurring between technology companies, between science, between regulators, and all sorts of different new traditional partnerships happening. And essentially, one of the things I'd like to highlight is that the regulators are creating innovation offices where essentially it's an open door for companies to come in and talk about their new innovations and have an open two-way dialogue with the regulator. And we've seen this as a kind of common theme come up over the last few years, where now regulators are having an open door policy for technology companies to come in and explain, for example, algorithms and technology innovations, etc. So one example I'd like to make is the Office of Innovation at the MHRA. We've had the opportunity to go and talk to them about artificial intelligence, about the virtualization of trials, about risk-based monitoring, and also about medical coding algorithms. And it's been really beneficial, I think, to both of us to be able to describe what it is and actually get really good feedback in the context of the changing laws. The biggest challenge is probably the whole plethora of different regulations, laws. For example, we have what we call the ICH, which is the International Conference on Harmonisation. So this organisation is regulators and pharma companies and trade associations coming together at a global and international level to define regulations at a regional level and to define a harmonised approach to clinical science. They create the guidelines, which then are adopted in each region. So, for example, in Europe, the EMA will then look to adopt the international regulations and so also then harmonise across Europe. And then, for example, in Europe, each European country has their own flavour. So not only are there international rules, regional rules, but there's also national anomalies as well. So the whole plethora of just the regulations that companies have to comply to, but also the changing environment. So when a company is operating today, they have to comply to certain regulations now, but then they have to look to the future and understand what is coming and how their operating model will be changing tomorrow. The regulators recognise that the science and technology is going at a very fast pace, but they also recognise the massive benefits that can be realised from, realising this new technological and innovative era. and they know the benefits that could be brought to patients, and also the efficiencies that could be gained. So the traditional models are being renovated. So there is a GCP renovation that the regulators and the pharma companies are collaborating over to actually look into, well, how does automation, AI, and some of these other techniques, how can that be regulated? There are different types of clinical trials, adaptive trials, umbrella trials, basket trials that are all new types of trials that didn't exist in the 90s when the current regulations were written. So these all are now being adapted for, I guess, a new future-proofing for tomorrow's new environment, which will hopefully see lots more efficiency, lots more provision of access to new therapies and to help patients, and more patient-centric technologies and innovations. The primary focus of regulations and the regulators' most foremost concern is the safety of patients within this environment. So there are certain procedures that go on today to make sure, this highly regulated environment is monitored, and the laws and compliance is met. And the same will happen tomorrow, in tomorrow's new regulatory era. There'll be new, perhaps, procedures, there'll be new technologies, there'll be new ways of doing things. There'll need to be robust controls and processes in place for the regulators to come and inspect. I see that obviously we talked about the pacing problem, where essentially science and technology goes at a very fast pace and you've got the regulation slightly behind. And I think that regulators are creating a lot of strategies and activities to help catch up. And so there are going to be essentially new activities going on. Like I said, the GCP renovation. There's also the regulatory science strategy, which includes a lot about the fostering of innovation in clinical trials, for example, how you regulate artificial intelligence. Also, something quite powerful will be the EMA are looking to enable decentralised trials across the EU. So the regulatory science strategy, I think, is a very good strategy for the future, which incorporates a lot of these new scientific and technological advancements.